It's on? Okay. Well, good night. Good night. Oh, good evening. Right. Bye-bye. No, right. I hope you enjoyed the forum. No, right. Hello, my name is Linda Barton, and I am the chair of the League of Women Voters of Fremont County. And the League is pleased to host a series of candidate forums during the 2022 election season. The League of Women Voters of Fremont County, Wyoming is a nonpartisan grassroots organization and part of the state and national League of Women Voters. The League believes that voters should play a critical role in democracy, and it encourages informed and active participation. The League is dedicated to voter education and voting rights and providing information that helps voters make informed decisions at the polls. The League of Women Voters of Fremont County was founded in the winter of 2020 by a group of local citizens who wanted to promote our free and open election process. Over 90 community members participated in town hall meetings and answered a survey to determine how the League should promote elections across Fremont County. Community members came together to determine the questions being asked this evening. The League does not support or endorse any candidate running for office. The League distributes unbiased candidate information through our election guide, mailed to over 18,000 households in Fremont County, and I hope you've all received one in your mailbox. Our Be a Voter guide informs the citizens of Fremont County of the many ways to register to vote, to request an absentee ballot. Copies of both of these publications are available at the entrance table. If you want to add your name to our listserv, please sign up at the information table and visit our Facebook page, Fremont County League of Women Voters, for information about our local elections, election guide, and candidate forums. We are hosting 6 additional forums, including tomorrow's forum at LVHS for Lander Mayor and City Council forums, which will take place at 6 p.m. Period. Next Thursday, October 13th, we will host the Riverton Mayor and House District 55 forums at the Riverton Library at 6 p.m. The final set of forums, House District 33, will be held on Sunday, October 16th at the Frank Wise Center in Fort Washakie, and that's number 3 Ethity Road, and that's at 5:30 p.m. And on Monday, October 17th, at the Carnegie Room, this room, at the Lander Library at 6 p.m. All but tomorrow's forums will be live streamed and recorded on YouTube. Tomorrow's forum will be videotaped and made available through County 10, WYO Today, and the League's website. The League this year will spend over $12,000 on election information this season. Please consider a donation to the League through our website and donation bowl at the information table. And thanks to those who've already donated to us. We invite you to join the League of Women Voters of Fremont County. Grab one of our brochures and become a member, or visit our website at leagueofwomenvotersfc.org. We thank County 10 and we thank Wyoming Today for hosting a video. Additionally, we thank Julie Cornea of Black Dog Design for her graphic design work, Western Printing for mailing the election guide across the county, our local donors for financially supporting the printing and mailing of the general election guide to all Fremont County households. To our county clerk in particular, Julie Fries, and the Fremont County Election Office staff for providing the guidance and information over the past few months and registering voters as they come in. She was here last time. I'm not sure she'll be here tonight. The forum committee made up of community members, and to the Fremont County League Board, Kate Foster, Jackie Hediger, Nancy Pirapan, Catherine Primrose, Barbara Townsend, and finally to Michelle Escudero for chairing the Education Committee. Finally, we want to thank the candidates for running for this office. It's not easy and it takes a lot of effort, and we welcome you and we wish you well. Again, the League of Women Voters of Fremont County works towards providing our community with unbiased education materials that enable voters to make informed decisions as a public service. Moreover, these forums are the best way for candidates to introduce themselves to the public while also informing the public about their platform. Additionally, these forums allow the audience to meet the candidates in person and allow a recording of the candidates' answers on a wide variety of topics to be viewed by the public at their convenience. The first step of the election guide, the general election guide, was sent to all candidates. They were sent a questionnaire to each elected office. The August 30th list, the last day to file was August 29th, was used to distribute questionnaires to candidates. Unfortunately, Jeff Martin, filing as an independent, was not included in that original list. When the League learned of his candidacy, the guide was already in print. In order to provide voters with his responses, we called and asked Mr. Martin to complete the questionnaire and indicated that we would market the information digitally and through printed copies at all election forums. Mr. Martin, to this date, has not responded to multiple communications and still has not answered our questionnaire. The League invited the candidates to this forum through electronic and phone communications. Additionally, there were numerous communications about the forum format. We have just learned that Mr. Martin has chosen not to participate in this forum. However, we do have one candidate, Representative Larson, who will have the opportunity to present his platform this evening. We are sorry that Mr. Martin has chosen not to join us here tonight to provide his information to the public, and we wish him well, and we thank Representative Larson for being here tonight. With that, please welcome our moderator for tonight's forum, Emily Tilden, who will discuss the guidelines and begin tonight's events. Following tonight's events, we invite you to a reception where there will be light refreshments and a time to discuss additional issues with the candidate. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and we're going to get started right now. Thank you so much.
Good evening. As Linda mentioned, I'm Emily Tilden, and I'm the forum moderator this evening. I'm also a mother of 2 boys, a coach at Elemental Fitness, an event director for a variety of endurance events in the community, and an active board member for several nonprofits here in Lander. When the League of Women Voters of Fremont County asked me to moderate this forum, I was honored. I firmly believe our democracy is based on our responsibility and right to vote. I am pleased to help educate Fremont County voters about choices on our election ballots. Our goal for this forum is to give candidates time to share their thoughts and ideas with voters. We have 2 candidates running for Wyoming House District 54. According to the census report, this district represents about 9,500 citizens and encompasses about 260 square miles. Current Representative Lloyd Larson is running as a Republican, and Jeff Martin is running as an independent. As Linda mentioned, this forum is being live streamed on YouTube County 10 and will be linked through County 10, WYO Today, and the Fremont County League of Women Voters website. So here are the details for this evening's forum. Since we only have the pleasure of Lloyd, it will be a little bit more simple. Lloyd is going to share a 2-minute prepared opening statement, and then I have 14 questions to ask you. And we are going to limit you at 2 minutes. And if you give me the double wink, maybe I'll give you 1 more minute on that special question that we talked about. Okay. Sam here is going to raise this orange sign when you have 15 seconds left of speaking, so you have to wrap it up so we can get to all the questions. Let's see. So we'll do 14 questions. There's a 1-word lightning round, so we will tell you 4 words, and you get 15 seconds to tell us what comes to mind about that word. They're very big words. It's like a vocab test. And then following the lightning round, there is an audience question round. So after the third round of the first round of questions, I will remind you, and if you have questions, write them on an index card. Linda will come around and collect them. She's going to preview and select questions. Depending on our timing, we may have the opportunity to answer more of those. So we'll see how we do here. And then finally, Lloyd can give us a 1-minute closing statement. I'll tell you all of that again.
Okay.
I'm confident that you, the audience, will hear things tonight that align with your thoughts as well as maybe disagree with. All the same, we will refrain from reacting to our candidate's responses so that he can remain focused on his message. Anything you can think of? Okay.
You're the boss, Em.
We're going to jump in. Here we go. Okay. All right. So our very first question, Lloyd. As an elected official, there's a never-ending learning curve and a wide range of subject matter that require a significant level of mastery. What skill sets do you possess that will assist you in representing the citizens of House District 54 appropriately?
And this is my opening statement.
Oh, I totally jumped the gun. You should not put me in charge. You should tell me your opening statement. You got a preview on that question.
Okay. And can you folks hear me in the back? We'll play with this a little bit. So the opening statement question is, why am I running for the legislature again? And I would just share with you that the needs of Wyoming are constantly changing, and the decisions that we make in the legislature right now are impacting the future of Wyoming for the next 50 to 100 years. I've been more involved than any other legislator in defining and creating and developing policies regarding the mission and the construction of the State Hospital in Evanston Life Resource Center here in Lander. I chair a subcommittee that is tasked with laying the foundation for creating and defining policies to help the state to define what the state's role is in providing mental health services to the state of Wyoming. I'm the vice chair of the House Appropriations Committee. Our budget bill this year was less than the budget bill 10 years ago. So as we reduce the spending in Wyoming, I also crafted the amendment that restored funding for critical services to the vulnerable populations. I am part of a work group redefining the state's energy policy to look at all energy options, including our traditional energies, coal, oil, and gas that provide 50% of the state's revenue, and to include and further define how we use nuclear, wind, solar, and hydrogen. All of this stuff's really important to me, but really no more important than what I've been able to do in the last few months. For example, to help one guy here in Lander get a property tax refund for his 90-year-old mother that had previously been denied, or to intervene with a family who was trying to get an easement across state land for a road and run into a roadblock with a state agency. It was also important for me this year to help a young college student from Lander when she arrived at an internship opportunity in Idaho to find out that her criminal background check for Wyoming had not been processed. Didn't know what to do, where to work, and couldn't go to work. And so she emailed me. I reached out to our clerk of court, Christy Green. She and her staff set aside their stuff, done a criminal background check, submitted it to Idaho. They accepted. The girl went to work. That's what I do, and that's why I'm running.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Sorry, Sam. Let's try that one again.
Let's try that one again. You ready? Okay. As an elected official, there's a never-ending learning curve and wide range of subject matter that require a significant level of mastery. What skill sets do you possess that will assist you in representing the citizens of House District 54 appropriately?
I think the best way to answer that is sometime when I went into the legislature, I was all for term limits for our state legislature. But what I found in being there, that the first couple of years we have very immature legislation coming from our first term legislators. And as you get to be familiar with agencies and learn how words matter and how language is, how the bills are crafted, it becomes really important to have sound public policy crafted in a way that will last for generations. And so you learn that as you become engaged, and some of the things that I've been involved in, chairman of tribal relations, and the things that I mentioned in my opening statement have really helped me to enhance. I'm a much better legislator now than when you elected me 10 years ago, I will tell you that. And so I think that work experience has really helped me to do that.
Great. Thank you. Your next question, also, if you would like me to say the question more than one time, I'm more than happy to do that.
I'm not afraid to ask.
Okay, so the recent United States Census identified that Wyoming's population grew the least amount among all Western states since the previous census. Additionally, Wyoming's gross domestic product declined. What is the sustainable future for Wyoming, where the population is largely static and attracting industry requires an available skilled workforce?
When I talked about how we're trying to redefine Wyoming's energy policy, these are the issues, and as we talk about healthcare, these are really the big issues that come to play. When we talk about having this demonstration project, this nuclear demonstration project that will require about 2,000 workers, what we don't want to do is look in the mirror and say, geez, why did we allow Texas people to come in and build that facility? Why didn't we do that with Wyoming people? But the reality of that is we're really limited on workforce and available. But we need to ensure that we use that to the best of our ability and try to help the state grow responsibly. I met this morning with some senior administrators from Washington, D.C., with the Center for Medicaid Services, and we was talking about healthcare delivery in Wyoming and the challenges we have when our whole population for Wyoming is less than their population for Baltimore, and the geographic areas that come into play there. We have some challenges, but we really have some opportunities, and we have I was at a nuclear task force meeting here a couple of months ago where the manufacturers and the contractors building that nuclear facility, we was asking them, so where is all of this stuff coming from? And we had Mike Wobbler from L&H Manufacturing in Gillette, who's built stuff for the space shuttle in presence, and they says, well, we'll have to get it someplace. Well, they start talking to this guy, and pretty soon they realize that we can do stuff here. We just need to educate the world that we can do it here. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Lloyd. All right. What changes, if any, would you make to the Wyoming tax structure to address the recent rise in property taxes? What changes would require a constitutional change?
About 10 minutes before I came here, I had a somewhat irate constituent, in fact, he's not my constituent, call me asking that same question. It's very difficult, but I think we need to lay the foundation that the Constitution has really directed where we're at with our property tax, that it has to be based on current market values. Then you take that value to 9% and then the mills, okay? And the reason for the sudden increase is we've had people coming in and paying far above market value property for property, which has driven everybody else's property values up, which is wonderful. I'm glad our house is worth more. But if I'm not going to sell it, then I have to pay these high taxes. So the challenge that our assessor has is what can we do as the legislature to help her give you relief now, which may be some tax rebates, a homestead, an exemption on the first $50,000 that we're talking about on the Homestead Act. But when we give that exemption, which property tax goes to the county and to schools, then we somehow have to backfill the counties and school with state general funds. So that relief is important and necessary, but we have to realize, Newton's third law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so if we're making this up, and we're working on that, but we have to fill it from someplace else as well. Sam, I'm going to take that from you.
Thank you again, Lloyd. All right, so that was 3 questions into our sort of first round. So if there are any audience questions, and you can, well, we'll give Linda some time to run around and pick them up, and then she'll read through them as well and give me the best ones. Did we get them all? Great. Thanks, everyone.
Do you want to give me a lightning word while we're waiting?
No, I'm going to save it for later. It's okay, this question will be good too. Okay, so your next question. Do you believe that Wyoming women should have access to safe and legal abortion in cases where pregnancy is the result of rape or incest, the pregnancy is not viable, or the health of the woman is in jeopardy? Why or why not?
So this year we had a trigger law, or trigger bill came before the legislature that would take effect if Roe v. Wade was overturned. That would make abortion illegal in Wyoming, except for in the cases as you described. I support that bill. I think that Roe v. Wade, I think that discussion on abortion really does come back to a state's right to make those decisions. If we feel, and I think in Lander, I spent day before yesterday on the porch of a lady whose feelings are strongly different than mine on this matter, and feels that it's a woman's right to choose. And we had a very frank conversation, and I think that we should be able to do that. But I do support that law that prohibits abortion. And my struggle here, folks, and for you that feel differently than I'm happy to have the conversation. I agree, a woman has rights for her health care, absolutely does. But I think that baby also has rights. And until I can get past that and saying who's defending the rights of that child to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I struggle with this other end.
Thank you, Lloyd. How do you view the state of our election integrity in Fremont County?
Well, we're lucky to have the best county clerk in the state, for one thing, and our elections in Wyoming, I was really proud of our Secretary of State, Buchanan, because after the last presidential election, there were anomalies in various states around the United States. And it was implied that perhaps some of that happened here in Wyoming as well. And so when he heard that, they were very diligent in investigating every accusation on how it applied to our voting machines, that our voting machines were hacked into, but none of our voting machines are tied into the internet, so that wasn't able to happen, and that there was anomalies going into that. And he was able to really validate through thorough research that Wyoming's voter integrity was sound. And I've listened to that. I've asked him questions as well. There will still be some that maybe disagree, but I'm convinced that it was very sound, and think that particularly Fremont County does a good job. And I will just share with you that in past elections, we've had some questionable things, and our county clerk has done a very good job of investigating that, and at times even reporting to the county attorney when there's been malice.
Great, thank you very much. Here's your next question. Although American Rescue Plan Act funds largely mitigated much of Wyoming's financial crisis connected to the Great Recession, it is clear that Wyoming's economy is too dependent on the declining mineral industry. How would you advocate for Wyoming's future economic health, which may or may not include renewable energy?
Well, the challenge, first off, in serving on appropriations now for 6 years, the biggest challenge when we had all of this infusion of federal money, and I have to share that I have a little angst with all of that money coming in because we don't have the money to do that to begin with. But if we don't, we just as well use it if they're going to put it out there. You may feel that that's a poor response, but that's what we've done. But it will not fund things moving forward. It's one-time money, and it's really been a challenge for us, for the county commissioners, for the city, to funnel this money to infrastructure projects or projects that can be addressed with one-time funding and resist the temptation to create new programs that will need traditional funding sources moving forward. I think that the biggest challenge that, and
Did you get that one?
I'm given, so the biggest challenge as we talk about our economy is we have potential here to do some really amazing things. But if you look at where our state revenue comes from, it really only comes from the extraction industries and a little bit from sales tax from the general population. So when you say that we want to do away, our declining mineral revenue coming in, how do we offset that? Well, that's easy. We just bring more business in, right? And create new business. So we bring a new business in. We have 2 new employees that we bring in from out of state. They pay a little property tax. They pay a little sales tax. We have no income tax. We have no corporate tax. We don't have anything. So these two families have 2 kids now that are in our school system, and we're paying $16,500, so $33,000 per family per year, $70,000, $74,000 per year. We don't get that back on property tax, sales tax, or anything else. So bringing those new businesses in, we're upside down. We really have to take a look at that.
I know you could talk about that longer.
Oh, man.
But thank you. What is your opinion of using public funding for private education, religious-based education, and/or charter school education? I know that you'll explain your answer.
That's a fair question. I've always felt that there was just a little bit of disconnect on, we fund education very well, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, a little later on. But I think families should have the flexibility to use those funds with their kids. The money to some degree should be able to follow the kid and go to a private school, or, well, I'll talk about private school, but to other schools. I think we have to protect public schools as well, but I think that there's opportunity there. The problem with going to a private school, St. Margaret's in Riverton or the Christian Academy up here, is our Constitution prohibits us from giving funds to private entities. So Wyotech in Laramie, great technical college that I keep thinking, man, we ought to be able to, but it's privately owned, and so we can't distribute public money to there. I think that we can work around that some, and we're trying to do that. That's what we do with some of our grants from the Wyoming Business Council, is we'll funnel those through the city, and the city can give it to private entities. So there's some work being done on that, but we've got to figure out our K-12 funding model first, because I think we've got to the legislature decided what that model is. We have a Cadillac model. It's a wonderful model. but it's not sustainable in my opinion. And I think that we can make adjustments in that model, and I've shared this with you before. We can go from the Cadillac to the Buick, still have butt warmers, still have XM radio, get everybody wherever it is we need to go safely, and save that difference. We need to look at that. That's a hard hill to climb in the legislature, but we're working on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next question. Currently, 22,000 Wyoming citizens do not have medical insurance. Currently, we operate under a 50-50 split with the federal government to cover Medicaid. Given the high cost of Wyoming healthcare and the Medicaid expansion estimate that Wyoming would pay about $9 million to the $68 million that the federal government will pay, why are you for or against Medicaid expansion for Wyoming? Lloyd, I'm really generously going to give you 4 minutes
Thank
for
you.
this. Okay.
So it's really important, first off, to establish who's eligible for Medicaid or who's ineligible. And so if you're 19 to 65, unless you have a developmental disability or something of that nature, you're not eligible for Medicaid. If you're a child, you're eligible if you fit the requirements. So when people talk about Medicaid expansion, they say, well, it will help children have more access. No, they're already eligible. It's this population of adults that come into play, and who are they? And I'll get to that. And so, but when the Affordable Care Act was first created, it come in and it said, we are going to provide health insurance subsidies for those who are 138% of a poverty level on above, and then above that, people can afford health insurance. If you're 130 or 100%, but they go to 138% down to zero, then you'll be put on Medicaid because all states are going to expand Medicaid and we're going to pay 100% of it. I voted against that, and I really didn't. It was just it was thou shalt, no flexibility, and it just scared us. I voted against it the first 2 or 3, 4 years, actually, and it wasn't until last year that I've changed my mind, because there's 2 Supreme Court cases. One that still I'm not really thrilled with, but they deemed that the Affordable Care Act was a tax and that it could be done. The second Supreme Court case said you cannot require a state to expand Medicaid. So what happens there is, if you are someone who, and in Wyoming it's 19,000 people, and most of them who are women, if you are 0 to 138% of poverty level, you make so you're probably, ask your waitress at the restaurant, ask the hotel maid if you have health insurance. And most of these people will say no, they can't afford health insurance, and they can't afford it, their employer doesn't provide it, and they make too little money to get any help on the exchange, because the exchange was for 138% and above. So by no fault of their own, these people are kind of stuck in this position. Now, is there a better way? So my feeling is we have an obligation to try and figure something out here. And if there's a way to do that and not expand Medicaid, yippee, I'm all for it. We haven't really found that yet, and I'm all ears. But if not, then yes, and I supported the Medicaid the last time we voted for it. I think I think we can't just leave them in this hole with no way out. Okay, and so what if they stop funding it at 90%? Now it's at 90%. What if they fund it at less than 90%? That would take a congressional action, because when they expanded Medicaid, it was a congressional act, and so it's part of that. So it's a little more difficult, but we can, in our plan, if we expand Medicaid, we can put some criteria on there that says if they do that, we're done. If they could enhance to get the $10 million a year that would be general fund, if our FMAP was increased, and the only reason we're not at a higher rate is because of Jackson Hole and their economy there, that would more than pay for that. I know that this is a sore and tender subject in Lander, Wyoming. There are those of you here that are just said, what, you know, this is a deal breaker. You expend Medicaid, you're going to hell. And there are those on the other side that says, you have got to expand Medicaid, and if you don't, you're going to hell. So I guess either way, that's where I'm headed. But it's a very, very serious conversation, and I think to turn our back and ignore it is wrong.
Thank you for all of that explanation. Now I get to have lots of explanation. It's a long question.
Okay.
Wyoming's 8 community colleges serve all 23 counties and play a significant role in educating non-traditional and adult students, while at the same time training employees and building a competitive workforce. Current funding is mainly through the Wyoming General Fund. The primary challenge facing these colleges is sustainable funding. Here's the reality. The state currently contributes 51% of total funding with the state aid block grant. Student tuition contributes 27%, and local mill levies contribute 22%. Budget erosion for the community colleges since 2010 amounts to $94 million. What ideas do you have to make our community colleges sustainable?
So the interesting thing here in this formula is when you look at the 23 counties, we only have 7 community college districts. Representative Oakley served on the Community College Commission. In fact, last year had an incredible amendment to enhance our community college budget that really helped community colleges out a lot. But so you have these 7 counties, or these 7 regions, which we're one in Fremont County. And so all of us here have a mill levy that goes to help support CWC. But the other counties that don't have community colleges don't have that mill levy. But yet we're educating their kids at our community colleges. And so I've always thought that was a little wonky. And so a couple of things that we can do there is charge out of region tuition for those that come from counties that don't pay a community college mill levy, or we expand the mill levy to those counties that aren't participating in that. That's probably the first thing that needs to happen. It's important to understand, though, that community college aren't constitutional. We've created them. University of Wyoming is, and we have to fund it. Community colleges aren't. So we have to be a little bit careful on what we do with our general funds. That in most community colleges are funded, and we've required our community colleges to require more for student tuition and put more of the burden on there, which comes back to be a challenge with the Constitution that says that education should be as free as possible. However, it's pretty free. It's pretty free in Wyoming, and you know, that's an ongoing debate, but we think that, I think that there can be more from the...
I cut you off at 2 minutes on that one. I didn't tell you.
From the student tuition. I got it, Sam.
Thank you, Lloyd. All right, we made it to question number 10.
Good.
Do you believe in environmental change caused or influenced by people, either directly or indirectly? Please explain.
Do I believe environmental change? Well, so I'm 65 years old. I can remember when air pollution you look at New York City or California, the cities in California, when you couldn't see the buildings. Was that environmental change created by man? Of course. Likewise, now that you can see it and it's been cleaned up, for example, our coal technology now has reduced emissions by 85, 87% that we didn't have back then. So yes, humans influence the environment, what we've done to our rivers and our lakes in my lifetime, both ways. When Titus I came in, the first oil well in Pennsylvania, they used to store the crude oil just in ponds. And when they started refining, gasoline wasn't used, it was a byproduct. They stored it in ponds. You can imagine the environmental impact that has, but that's been remediated, and we've done that as being stewards of the environment. So yeah, sure.
Great, thank you. Next question. Given that Fremont County does not have a temporary acute care medical facility for mental health patients, and that the Wyoming State Mental Hospital in Evanston has limited beds for use by the entire state, what are your ideas for improvements and solutions to provide adequate mental health services in Fremont County and in Wyoming? Please explain.
As I mentioned in my opening comments, I chair a subcommittee on mental health and my involvement with the State Hospital and Life Resource Center. What we found going back 8 years ago is our policy for these types of things just was not established. And what I've learned, and this would be a good exercise for all of you, is when you look at these ideas and these suggestions from old, fat, gray-haired guys like me, the question you should ask is, what's the state's role in this? And if we have a role as a state, then what's our policy? And so we've, since 2014, when we created the task force for the State Hospital and Life Resource Center, we said that there was a role, but we had to establish a new policy, making those a safety net for those vulnerable populations with an exit strategy to where they would always live in the community. As we laid that foundation and got it into place, we then find that we have these other mental health ideas come into play. So 3 years ago, I passed a bill that changed our funding for behavioral health. We fund that about $170 million a year for our community mental health providers, Fremont Counseling and those type. They came into play in the 70s in a federal act. There was not conformity on how services were provided statewide. Every region had their own. It was kind of this walk-in slide fee scale, and they do a great job, but they had no direction. And so what we've done, and we're in the process of completing now, is we've said, if you're going to get state dollars for mental health, it needs to go to our community mental health providers. It needs to go to these populations that are priority, to keep them out of the judicial system, to hand off when they come out of the judicial system, to divert them away from the state hospital, or to get them when they come out of the state hospital, or to intervene for families that are in crisis before the judicial system comes into play. And so we've realigned that. The gap we have, I'm going to take that away from Sam here. The gap we have, no, folks, the gap we have that's really come and identified is that in our state, at any one time, we have about 14 young people who have very difficult behaviors. Our RTCs, our regional treatment centers, our psychiatric regional centers like St. Joe's or WBI won't take them. And so do we have a role there? We don't have anything defined. And so right now what they do is they go spend time in a county jail. A 13-year-old girl in Park County spending a number of weeks in a county. We don't want that. That's not what we need to do. So we are at that point where we're identifying how then, and have a pilot program going on actually up here to learn what we don't know, to really define the policy, because we do believe the state has a role.
You should have given me the double wink on that one. Yeah, that one. That was good. Thank you, Lloyd. All right, here's your next question. Public lands are an essential economic driver for the state of Wyoming, and Lander in particular. Public lands are also vital to the quality of life that many residents enjoy, and public lands are managed for various uses. In your vision of Wyoming, what is the role of public lands? What are the challenges facing our public lands?
I've always been a real strong advocate of multiple use. 3 minutes. I've always been a real strong advocate of multiple use. I think public lands, as I pointed out, 50% of our revenue comes from the extractive industries, and most of that takes place on public lands, and so that's important to do. We also love to recreate on our public lands, and it's interesting and I think that there's room to do all of that. I think what I've been most involved with over the last year is to try and help the state parks and to establish a policy on what our outdoor recreation is. It's important to the state. We sometimes like to think that recreation can replace the revenue that we get from minerals, and I'm not being mean. I hope, well, I probably am, but I'm not intending to be. But if you're in the driver's seat and recreation is behind you, you can't even see it in the rear view mirror. You know, it's important. It's important, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and make sure that we have multiple use. I will tell you, and I'm reporting back to my constituents a number of years ago, and I still believe this. I still believe this. I think that the state could handle the public lands and could administer the public lands in Wyoming. I heard very loud and clear from you, and it didn't matter what party you belonged to, that, Lloyd, we do not like that idea. And even though I think that it works, I will defend your position and will not entertain such foolishness again, if you will. Because it's really important that we have access to public lands, which may get into the corner crossing conversation later. I don't know.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next question. Childcare and early education are critical for young children and their educational outcomes, yet are costly for struggling working families. Do you believe in universal funding for childcare and early childhood educational programming? Why or why not? Are there investments that can make childcare more affordable for families and increase provider wages?
What's the role of state government in this matter? You know, so if you, I think that it's critical, and we do fund about $35 million a year to the child development centers to identify developmental delays to help them get ready for education, for Part C and Part B of the Individual with Disability Education Act. Early education and where that starts and should it be funded by the school, I think I'm not ready to go there and fund that on a statewide basis. But I do believe the early intervention component of that, like the child development centers, which has historically resided within the Department of Health, really does belong in the Department of Education. And I used to call those the CDCs my ladies, because they're very passionate about these kids and identifying those developmental delays. But I don't know that it's the state's responsibility to provide child care.
Thank you. Your last question. Out of all the Wyoming counties, Fremont County is most acutely affected when it comes to the ambulance and life flight services, as well as trained volunteer staff. Funding from the ARPA allowed local ambulance service to continue. How should we fund local ambulance service post-ARPA funding? Additionally, how do we reduce the number of life flights?
Well, you touched the boil on my butt on that one.
But it's the last question.
I have to tell you, so emergency medical services all across the state are troubled. But Fremont County sends more life flights out of here than any other 5 counties combined. Why is that? And I've had conversations, and it just drives me crazy, and I don't hate the guts and livers of those guys that fly the airplanes and do that. It's not their job is to deliver those patients there safely. We love them, and we're glad that we have that. But I think if you're going to send me, if you're going to fly me to Casper, I ought to at least have a say in that before I'm thrown on that plane. Because it might just be that my wife, who is a very good driver, could drive me over. I really struggle with that. So, and then, without any say on my part, I get to be the wonderful recipient of an $80,000 bill. You know, I think we can, and we're working on that. So how do we address emergency medical services? And Senator Case and Commissioner Jones and Scott Harnsberg and I really have done some brainstorming, and this is kind of a brainchild of Senator Case, is we looked at, is if you look at our solid waste district, now this goes back to institutional knowledge and understand things in the state and having, that doesn't come the first couple of years you've been in the legislature. But if you look at our solid waste district and how that's formed, what you do is the commissioners have the ability to form a district. Funding the district, a mill levy, requires a vote of the people, okay? Once they vote on it, which we did for our solid waste district, then it funds the disposal of solid waste. We've got a draft bill. Senator Case is the prime sponsor, and I'm a co-sponsor of that, to do the same with an emergency medical district, to allow the commissioners to create a district. If emergency medical service is important to the citizens of the county, or any county in the state, then they would have the right to fund that through a mill levy themselves. Instead of trying to figure out how we somehow appropriate on a regular basis money that has to be spread like peanut butter on bread across the whole state, this allows the counties to be responsive. And if our county doesn't want it, so be it. So be it. We don't put that in. But I think that that's a reasonable approach, local control of defining how you want emergency medical services.
Great, thank you, Lloyd. Okay, have a sip of water. Have a stretch.
Okay.
Lightning rounds, you better be fast. No, I'm kidding.
No more than 2-syllable words.
Cannot promise that. You only are going to get 4 words.
Okay.
15 seconds. You can say one word. You can say as many words as you want in 15 seconds. And
No
then I'm
swear
going to
words.
start telling pirate jokes or something.
Swear
Okay.
words.
Your first word is inclusion.
When I think of inclusion, the thing that I think that's most important, I think the Life Resource Center to be included in this community, and working with Winter Reservation to be inclusive while respecting sovereignty, inclusion of citizens of the state. Close.
You did it. Your next words are severance tax.
So severance tax, particularly on minerals, is 6% on oil and gas, 7% on coal, 5% on sand and gravel and trona. 50% of our revenue is generated from the extractive industry. If we've got to be careful not to be greedy.
Your next
I
word.
could have used a 2-minute one on that one. Okay, go ahead.
I believe you.
Go ahead.
Your next word is diversity.
Diversity. Whew, there's no place like Fremont County. There's no place like Fremont County. When you talk about issues in Fremont County, no other place in the state has it quite like us. It really is unique and diverse.
Your final word, lightning round, is equity.
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 I think we have a responsibility to administer government in a manner that provides equity in all distributions of state government.
Thank you.
Okay.
How many cards do you want to do?
Listen, I don't care. So, Em, I just think that this is really important, and I appreciate people being here. I think this is an opportunity for you to ask, and I have a responsibility. You have a right to know what I feel.
Great. Okay, we're going to ask all the cards, but I'm only going to give you 1 minute.
It is scary. Okay.
Okay. Question number 1. What is your perspective on human-induced climate change, and what should Wyoming be doing?
So do I think humans have an impact on the environment? Yes. Do I think that they've caused global warming? I'm not convinced of that.
Do you think Wyoming should be doing something?
I think we are.
Great.
So, okay, so what should Wyoming do if not? So I think, look at what we're doing with the Integrated Test Center to try and figure out what we can do with carbon dioxide. Not just injecting it or sequestration, but is there something that we can use to, because if we can pull that out of the air, we're looking, what if, as you looked at the trona industry, who is constantly in a battle with China with their synthetic energy, with their synthetic trona, what if you could make that green trona, okay? And you do that with nuclear energy because it's carbon free. Now, we might think that sounds a little silly, but if you're the trona manufacturers and you're in a global market competing with the rest of the world, it suddenly becomes something that you consider. Okay?
Great. Thank you. Here's our other question. Our community is being divided by extreme ideas and misinformation. What will you do to bring our community together to work for the best interest of all?
This is the strangest election cycle in my 10 years that I've been in. And I think that the challenge that I've had, and this goes back to conversations about what the state legislature's done. Forget anything nationally, forget anything globally. The biggest challenge that I've had is there seems to be an emotion that floats the opinion of people without taking the time to read and understand the issue at hand to really determine if whatever it is that's floating the emotion can be sustained.
Great. Tell us about serving on the JAC and how that benefits Lander, Fremont County, and the state.
That is like the funnest committee. And the reason is, I think it would kind of, if you as a physician, it'd like being an internist where you just know everything inside the human body, because on appropriations you really have to know every aspect, for the most part, of state government. What that has allowed me to do for Fremont County is when there's funding needs, the Life Resource Center and the state hospital, I think I've really been able, as we've had cost overruns or done anything or enhancements needed, I've been able to get that through. We're moving Department of Family Services up to getting them out of a building that doesn't serve them well, because I serve on appropriations. I have this wonderful friend that I rely on a lot that overseas, and I've looked at that facility. We needed something else. I could do that because of our position on appropriations.
Thank you. This person is greatly concerned with the influence and presence of marijuana and other drugs, especially over our young community members. Will you support the legalization of marijuana?
No. I don't. I don't support legalization of marijuana for medical or recreation. I hear and see the evidence on edibles that is really not controlled. You know, a lot of it just goes back to my traditional values on marijuana, but I just, you know, if that's a deal breaker, I understand, but I'm not supporting it.
Thank you. Hold on, let me pre-read the question before I say it out loud to you.
While she's reading that, I do think we have to be careful on how criminal marijuana is. I think we can, I don't want to legalize it, but I don't think you have to hang for it either.
Okay, I
Okay.
processed this
You
question.
ready?
Yeah. Where do you stand on the federal government's 30/30 initiative? Should Wyoming be taking measures to block this and other examples of overreach by the federal government?
I don't like the 30/30 program initiative that's coming out with the government. That's imposing on our state, and I just struggle with that. Wyoming works very well identifying the resources, both state, private, and federal, for the benefit of all mankind, not only the citizens of the state, but the globally as well. I really get anxious when I see them wanting to have controls of our water, our surface water, all these things that have historically been granted to the states. And I don't support that. I think it's overreach. Do we try to protect our resources? We absolutely do. We wish the federal government would do the same and do something with our dang forests that are getting eaten up with bugs and doing some of these other things. So get off that soapbox. Thanks, Sam.
Okay. Last question. Should Wyoming be a sanctuary state for Second Amendment rights? Why or why not?
I'm not big on sanctuary state status for really any initiative, even the ones I love. I'm a Second Amendment guy, but I sanctuary. You know, we get up and stomp the ground and take the bark off trees because they're sanctuary cities on immigration and on a variety of other things. And I just don't think that that's a good practice to get into.
Thank you. All right, Lloyd, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Being in the legislature is really fun. And I have to tell you that it is such an honor to be down there and think. You look up at the dome. I generally get to the Capitol about 5 in the morning, and I'm there all by myself, and you just have to say, this is Wyoming. And here we are, and we're making these decisions that my grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be impacted by. It's really important for me that you're comfortable. I'm fine that you don't agree with me, but I hope you feel comfortable in talking to me. And if you feel, stuff it, Sam. If you feel that I'm not jiving, you know, I think it's very, very important to talk, and I promise I don't like to walk away from an effort thinking that I've done it half-baked. There's another term for that, but I don't want to do it for half-baked. And I think that I've put in the hours and the time to represent you to the very best of my ability. And it takes, I'm not a quick learner, and I'm not a quick study, and so it takes me a lot of time to grasp the notwithstandings and the language and the bills and the issues and how the unintended consequences that can come from my great ideas. And so I committed to you to continue doing this for the next 2 years. I don't know how many more of these that I want to do, but we are so involved in, we are just really have some critical things going on right now that I want to continue seeing and getting completed. So thank you all for being here. I know that this was a little different than what we had planned. I know that it was, you know, this is like going to the ice cream parlor and you get to, I mean, I have you to myself. I hope that I have not abused that, and I hope that I've been fair in those comments. So thank you for your time, and Em, thank you. Sam, I'm going to meet you outside.
Only because it's you, John. Yeah, what is it?
So this is really an interesting thing, with your permission, Emily.
Sam, get that card back out.
Yeah.
You have 3 minutes, and then you all can talk about it at dinner later.
So here's the interesting thing as we talk about energy moving forward, is that as the demand for coal, oil, and gas goes down, and it will continue to go down as things change. The thing that's so wonderful about that is we get the severance tax on the use of that coal, oil, and gas used in generation of energy. That's our severance. As we convert for this demonstration project, as we convert to nuclear, we're displacing coal, so we don't no longer have that severance. So what's the benefit of the nuclear energy to the operation of state government? We can say the same with our solar farms, because that's doing the same thing. It's displacing. Same with wind. And so in a nuclear form I asked that question, and people get it. We just got to be brave, because it's the T word. And heaven forbid. So you can say severance, even though severance is the T word. We put the T word on all the extractive industries, but we don't want to put the T word on anybody else. And so we'll sit there and suffer and wither and die, rather than have these other resources contribute back to the economy of the state, which I think we need to do with wind and solar and nuclear, as well as others. So that cow, I use my cow story, that cow, that extractive industry pasture was tall in grass. The cow's fat, or udder's just full, and she's filling every glass over full for generations in severance tax revenue. So in doing that, we give everybody all of these tax exemptions, and we do all that because we've got the revenue. The grass is only about this tall now, and the cow is eating, but she's pretty gant, and she's only given us about a half a glass. If a half a glass is fine, so be it. But if we need to have a full glass of milk, we've got to look at some of those pastures surrounding us that have taller grass. They're not as big of pastures, but the cows over there have full udders, and they're in pretty good shape. And perhaps we need to look at filling the cups from some of those as well.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd. Lloyd, thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you for being here tonight. I think we're all honored at the work that you've done, and really appreciate hearing more from you this evening. To the audience, we hope that you'll join the League of Women Voters at the Lander Valley High School tomorrow evening for the Lander Mayor and City Council forums, which start at 6 o'clock in the auditorium at the high school. And then sort of final thing, there's a QR code here up front if you'd like, and there's also one down on the front table when you came in. And so if you have a second to fill out a survey to just let the League of Women Voters know how we can do a little bit better, we're certainly interested in hearing from you guys on that. And then there are some refreshments in the back, and you're welcome to hang out and ask Lloyd any more questions. He would love to talk more if you would like to ask him anything else. And otherwise, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you.